Greetings, my lovable weirdos, and welcome back to my channel. I'm just gonna go ahead and put a disclaimer right here that you may see this particular sclera start wandering around throughout this video, and that's because it's refusing to stay put on my eye. But it's only this one, I'm not sure why. Maybe it's too big for my eye, maybe my eye's too small for the sclera, I don't know. But this one is giving me a lot of trouble today, and it's more noticeable because it's got a red iris. You don't really notice it when it's just the plain black scleras. But yeah, apologies in advance if that happens throughout the video and if it freaks you out. I can feel it doing already. Okay, if you're new here, hi, welcome. I'm Tilly, and you can follow me on Instagram at TillyCXZ to get updates on this channel, or if you're curious as to how I do my makeup. Or you can follow me at MatildaCXZ if you're curious as to what I do outside of YouTube. If you're a returning subscriber but you missed my last couple of uploads and you're wondering what's going on, this is a new series where I talk about the weird, paranormal, and allegedly true stories that have gone on to inspire pop culture. If you're here just for the Tinker Tuesday and Transformation Thursday stuff, that's gonna mainly be on my Instagram now. So if you decide this is not for you and you want to unsubscribe and just follow me there, or just unfollow me completely, that is totally fine. There's no hard feelings. You do you. Last week, I talked about one of Singapore's most famous haunted locations, Old Changi Hospital. For this week's episode, we're staying within the Southeast Asian region and doing a bit of a throwback to one of the very first Halloween looks I ever did on this channel. That's right, I'm going to be talking about the Pontianak. Warning: the following presentation contains references to the paranormal, violence against women, graphic descriptions of gore, and death. Viewer discretion is advised. The next time you're out on a quiet walk under the full moon, take a moment to pay attention to your surroundings. Is that the quiet whine of a dog? Or the distant cries of a baby? And what is that sweet, pleasant scent in the air? You might want to be careful, because those are the signs that there may be a Pontianak nearby. Many countries around the world have legends and hauntings featuring a white lady. England has the White Lady of Beeford, whose curse is allegedly responsible for a car crash that took the lives of 6 people. Wales has the Ogmore apparition, who's said to guard a hidden treasure. The Netherlands has the Wietwieven, who, depending on your moods, may either abduct women and newborns or aid in childbirth. The Philippines has the White Lady of Balete Drive, who allegedly haunts cabbies and solitary drivers along that street. And of course, Japan has Sadako. One of the most popular and most feared mythological creatures in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore, the Pontianak, or the Kuntilanak as she's known in Indonesia, is a female spirit whose lore features 2 different origins. A Pontianak can either be the spirit of a woman who died during childbirth, and usually in this version the child doesn't make it either, or she can be the vampiric spirit of a woman who was brutally murdered. In both versions of the Pontianak lore, the common thread is male-inflicted violence that results in the creation of a bitter ghost who's out for revenge. The Pontianak is commonly depicted as a beautiful woman with pale skin, red eyes, and long black hair. She is often dressed in white, and this can sometimes be a blood-smeared white dress. Once she lures in her prey, usually an unsuspecting man, though it is said that she can sometimes target children or those who are vulnerable and helpless, a Pontianak will then transform into a hideously monstrous creature. According to the legend, in cases where a Pontianak specifically targets a man for revenge, she will physically eviscerate him with her long, sharp fingernails and feast on his internal organs. And if her victim has their eyes open, she will suck their eyes out of their head. The Indonesian Kuntilanak will take the form of a bird when targeting virgins and young women, and may be summoned using black magic to specifically target a woman and make her fall ill. Allegedly, one of the characteristic symptoms that a woman has been cursed to be targeted by a Kuntilanak is vaginal bleeding, which has me wondering if the legends of the Pontianak and Kuntilanak are actually euphemisms for women coming of age, but I haven't really been able to find anything in terms of the original lore that either confirms or denies this theory. Another difference between the Kuntilanak and the Pontianak is that when luring in a male victim, a Kuntilanak will allegedly suddenly turn around to reveal that her back is hollow. Similar to the Indonesian Sunda Bolong, which is another white lady legend, but this one is specifically that of a prostitute ghost with a large gaping hole in her back. A Pontianak's male victims are alleged to be the men who inflicted violence and suffering on her during her lifetime, though they may also be men who have harmed other women or those who unwittingly approach her at night. Which is why the more superstitious parents and grandparents here warn against looking directly at a beautiful woman if you're out alone at night, much less approaching her or touching her without her consent, because you never know, you might just be harassing a blood-sucking ghost. According to the legends, both the kuntilanak and the Pontianak can be subdued with a sharp nail. In the case of a kuntilanak, you will have to plunge the nail into the top of her head. With a Pontianak, you will have to aim for the nape of her neck, and allegedly, once you drive this nail into the nape of her neck, she will transform back into a beautiful woman and a perfect wife, until the nail is removed. Pontianaks are usually associated to banana and rubber trees because that's where they're alleged to reside during the day. And if you're a fan of taking walks at night, Pontianaks apparently only appear under a full moon. So as long as you stick to the other moon phases, you should be fine. But if you're determined to take your walk under a full moon, here are the signs to watch out for that may signal that a Pontianak is near. It is said that a Pontianak usually announces her presence with the sound of dogs, a crying baby, or feminine laughter. If you hear a dog howling and the loud crying of a baby, that allegedly means that there's a Pontianak around, but she's not that close. But if the baby's cries sound quiet or the dog is whining instead, you're allowed to freak out because that allegedly means that there is a Pontianak very, very nearby. Her presence is also heralded by the floral scent of the frangipani flower, followed closely by the stench of a decaying corpse. Speaking of smells, one of the ways that a Pontianak allegedly tracks down her victims is through the scent of their clean laundry, which is why some of the more superstitious Malaysians will refuse to leave their laundry drying outside overnight. Considering the popularity of the Pontianak, it should come as no surprise that there have been numerous movies made about this mythological creature. The very first horror movie featuring the Pontianak was a Malaysia-Singapore collaboration that was released on the stroke of midnight on April 27, 1957, and was simply titled Pontianak. The plot centers around Chomel, an abandoned child who grows into a hunchback. She is adopted by a medicine man, and from whose writings she discovers a potion to transform her into a beautiful woman. However, this transformation comes with the condition that she can never taste human blood. Chomel grows up and eventually gets married. But unfortunately, her husband gets bitten by a snake, and in order to save his life, Chomel attempts to suck out the poison from the bite on his leg. This turns her into a Pontianak, a beautiful woman by day, but a horrendous vampiric monster at night who ends up killing many people in her village. Produced by Cathay Keras Film Productions, it was a Malay language movie directed by Indian film director B.N. Rao and starred Malaysian actress Maria Manado. The movie premiered here in Singapore at the Cathay, which is this fancy building in Dhoby Ghaut that's still standing today, and was originally slated to only be screened for 2 days. But it was so well received that its run at the Cathay was not only extended, but the movie was then also screened at the Taj Cinema in Geylang. Altogether, Pontianak's first run in Singapore lasted a grand total of 41 days, which was unheard of for a Malay movie at the time. In fact, even having the premiere at the Cathay was unusual because the Cathay had never screened a Malay movie before Pontianak. Even today, the Cathay is considered kind of atas, or elegant. And at that time, it only screened Hollywood or European films. Pontianak not only broke that long-standing tradition, but it's believed to be the movie that established the horror genre here in our local film industry. One of the smart things that the filmmakers did was that they released both a Malay version and a Mandarin version of the movie, making it accessible to a wider audience. In fact, it even appealed to the Indian communities here, even though there wasn't a Hindi version of the movie. The movie was so popular that it was dubbed into Cantonese so that it could be screened in Hong Kong, and eventually into English for American television so that it could be entered into the Asian Film Festival. Sadly, Pontianak didn't win any awards. What it did go on to do, though, was spawn 2 sequels. Dendam Pontianak, or Revenge of the Pontianak in 1957, and Sumpah Pontianak, or Pontianak's Curse in 1958, and it also launched its lead actress Maria Manado into overnight stardom. While she was already known as a model, the movie would lead to Time magazine naming her the most beautiful woman in Malaya in their November 1957 issue. She would go on to become the first Malay actress to star opposite Bollywood actor Shami Kapoor, and would eventually become the first female Malay producer, founding her very own Maria Manado Productions. Now, if that's not impressive enough, Manado was also the one responsible for the SFX makeup in the original Pontianak movie. The budget for the movie was apparently so small that she had to provide a lot of her own wardrobe, and she and the director worked closely together to try to figure out how to achieve that transformation from daytime beauty to nighttime bloodsucker using only what she had in her makeup kit, which was a process that took hours to apply and film because they didn't have the benefit of CGI back then. But it paid off though, because her monster makeup was highly commended, even though it was noted that it restricted her facial movements. Which I totally get, because if you guys remember my very first zombie prosthetic makeup here on this channel, covered half my face, could barely move anything, much less emote. Imagine Manado had that all over her face. That's tough to act through. The success of the 1957 movies Pontianak and Dendam Pontianak spurred Cathay's competitors, the Shaw brothers, to create their own trilogy of Pontianak-themed movies. And although none of these were award-winning, the original Pontianak trilogy does hold a couple of Singaporean records. Pontianak was the first Malay movie to ever be dubbed into Mandarin here in Singapore, while Sumpah Pontianak was Singapore's first cinemascope or widescreen film. And here's another interesting bit of trivia. The original Pontianak movies features music by Zubir Said, who would go on to compose Majulah Singapura, Singapore's national anthem. Unfortunately, if you are a horror movie fan who was hoping to check out the original Pontianak trilogy, you can't. Lok Wanto and Ho Alok, who were the partners behind Cathay Care's film productions, apparently had a falling out at some point, and by the time Ho Alok obtained sole rights to the films, the trilogy was prohibited from being screened because Maria Manado had ended up marrying the Sultan of Pahang. And I guess the Sultan didn't want his Sultana to be seen as a horrendous vampiric creature. One story goes that Ho was so frustrated by this that he ended up throwing the original copies of the first two films into a mining pool. Another story, which Manado alleges to be true, claims that Ho had stored the films in an air-conditioned room in his house, but his wife made him get rid of them because they were taking up too much space. And so he threw them into a mining pool. Either way, even though the first two Pontianak movies have been consigned to a watery grave, the legend of the Pontianak continues to inspire Southeast Asian and international creators to this day. In the 2014 indie survival horror game, Dread Out, kuntilanaks and other Indonesian mythological creatures terrorize the protagonist as she and her friends try to escape a deserted old town. The Winchester brothers face off against Pontianaks in the supernatural tie-in novel Cold Fire, released in 2016, and the 2017 Venice Film Festival nominated short film It's Easier to Raise Cattle explores the friendship between a shy teenage girl who discovers that her wild child best friend is a Pontianak. It's interesting to note that modern interpretations of the Pontianak and kuntilanak legends have been expanding on the vengeful female ghost lore to explore the concept of what it's like to be a woman in a patriarchal society. Amanda Nell Yu, writer and director of It's Easier to Raise Cattle, says this about the Pontianak, quote, "She can walk alone and not have to be accompanied by a man. She can be as beautiful and provocative as she wants. She can be extremely gentle or a massive flirt. But if you dare touch her without her consent, her claws will come out." End quote. She goes on to explain that while the Pontianak's violence can be morally questionable, it can also be interpreted as a form of power and freedom. It's about, quote, "letting your freak flag fly and not giving a shit," end quote. And she's not the only one who views the Pontianak and kuntilanak legends in this light. Dr. Alicia Izarudin, who is a senior lecturer in gender studies at the University of Malaya, describes the Pontianak as disrupting Malay ideals of femininity. Looking at the origin lore that claims that a Pontianak can be the spirit of a woman who dies during childbirth, Precisely because she's unable to be a mother, the Pontianak legends challenge the social expectations of traditional Malay culture, which views reproduction as an essential part of a woman's identity. In a way, the Pontianak is a creation of social fears. Amanda Nell Yu said this in a Vice interview in 2018. Quote, "I feel great sympathy for the Pontianak. On first sight, you're afraid of her. But afterwards, you realize that the real monsters are humans and society. All horror stories are created from this." End quote. So, what do you think? Is the Pontianak a cautionary tale meant to warn against the dangers of approaching strangers at night? Or is she a feminist icon? Either way, the Pontianak continues to play an integral part in the myths and legends surrounding Southeast Asia. Pontianaks are said to still haunt places like Pasir Ris Park, Old Tampines Road, and Neo 2 Estate here in Singapore. And of course, I can't forget Kuntian, the capital of the Indonesian province of West Kalimantan, which is also called the City of Pontianak, because it's believed that the area in which the city was founded was at one time infested by the vengeful ghosts. In fact, the Pontianak is so tied into the history and culture of that city that at one point, the heads of West Kalimantan's youth, tourism, and sports agency even proposed a giant Pontianak statue be built. The proposal was for a 100-foot statue that would tower over the point where the city's Kapuas and Landak rivers met, doubling as an observation tower for tourists. Now, I honestly don't know how legit this story is because it sounds so far-fetched, but it was published in the Straits Times and that's considered a legitimate newspaper here, and I checked the publication date and it wasn't April Fool's, so, I mean, it's an idea. And it inspired people to create their own versions of what this might look like. And that's it for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed learning more about the Pontianak, and I hope you guys are enjoying this new series. Let me know in the comments down below if there's something in particular you would like me to check out. Like I mentioned, I have a whole bunch of pre-recorded videos for the month of October for Halloween, but once that's done, I would love to know what you guys would like me to research. If your country has a particular urban legend or myth that's not well known and you'd like me to talk more about it, let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, be nice to yourself, be nice to each other, and remember to keep on embracing your inner weirdo. Bye!